Almost. Good to go.
Okay, let's call the meeting to order.
The associate.
Rita, would you do a roll call, please?
Mrs. Delafield? Here. Mr. Murphy?
Here.
Mr. Roche?
Here.
Mrs. Smith? Here. Chairman Smith?
Here. You all have in your package the minutes from our meeting of July 3rd. Anybody have any comments, corrections, additions, deletions? Do we have a motion to approve?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? If not, Rita?
Mrs. Delafield? Yes. Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Roche?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith? Yes. Chairman Smith?
Yes. You have in front of you the meeting dates coming up. You see we have no meeting in August, and the next meeting is September 26th. I think Malcolm is not able to make that meeting. Is anybody else going to be here? September 26th. Gary, you okay there? You're not back with the girls in school?
That's what I had to look at volleyball schedule. I just put that up last minute. Sorry.
Mr. Chairman, we need to set dates for November and December.
Oh, good, yes, thanks. You see, we said TBD there. The dates fell, I think, believe it or not, maybe on Thanksgiving and either the day of or the day after Christmas. I think I'd recommend we go to the prior Thursday, if that's okay. Rita, do you have a calendar there? What would that be in November?
It would be the 21st.
That sound okay to everybody? Okay, so we'll go with that. And what about December?
That's December, your regular meeting date is the 26th, which is the day after Christmas.
I don't think that'll do well.
So you want to do the 19th, which is the day before your regular, the week before your regular.
Yeah.
That'll be the 19th.
Okay, so November 21st and December 19th.
Right.
We'll check each with the next few meetings, but September 26th, I think we'll have a quorum. Should be good.
I am not going to be.
Uh-oh.
Yes.
That's 2 no's already, Rita, for September 26th. Gary and Malcolm cannot be here.
Well, I think at least one will be back.
Okay.
Maybe 2, 2.
Mrs. Jones, probably not.
No.
I would think not.
No, I don't think so.
All right, well, as any of you know the dates you're not going to be here, and you know most of them now, if you'll let Rita or me know, it would be great. We now can start the public part of the hearing. So anybody need to declare any ex parte communication? No. Rita, would you administer the oaths to anyone who's going to speak?
Anyone that cares to speak or thinks they do for any of this meeting, please stand. Raise your right hand. You care to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Would you please leave your name at the end of the meeting or whenever your part's done, and so we can put you in the minutes.
Thank you, Rita. To the committee, I'd like to recommend that we split the order here on the 2 items of number 1 and 2. I think that we'll probably be spending a little more time on the Little Club application than we will on the land clearing permit application, which is item number 2. Does anybody have any objections to that? The town level, we okay with that? No. Okay, so we're going to change the order, and we're going to go first with probably Rick. Are you going to speak on behalf of?
Dan Carter will.
Okay, come on up, please.
I'm trying to grab a plan out of my briefcase, sorry. Good morning, board. Dan Carter, Landscape Architects.
project before you is a landscape plan for the demolition of the lot on 3420 Gulfstream Road. I think they're in for a demo and land clearing permit. Some of the issues that were brought up to us for the landscape plans to, well, first of all, the landscape plan specifies clusia across the front property line at 5 to 6 foot overall height, with the entire lot to be sodded and irrigated, including the right of way. There are no significant trees on the site. There are some materials on the back property line that should be removed at some point in time because they're going to start interfering with some of the wires. But at this point in time, they're not interfering. It was mentioned to me that that there was an interest in utilizing ficus across the right-of-way front property line. We selected the clusia because it's a native, it's less maintenance, it requires less water, etc. But if the board is has a strong feeling about utilizing ficus to create a unity look across the front property line, that's not an issue.
It's ficus to the south now, the big hive.
It is.
Ficus.
It's probably a 8 or 10 foot ficus, existing ficus on the Wilson's property. Yes.
So then there's the house that's going to be demolished, and what's the hedge on the north side?
It's ficus again.
Okay.
So as I say, I don't believe that's an issue with the owner.
So what they're doing actually is tearing down, it's a white house with black trim on it, a two-story on one side, and they're going to make that their backyard.
That's correct.
There's going to be a unity of title, Greg or Trey.
Not at this
I
time.
thought I read that in here someplace.
It was part of the application, but there is nothing currently pending, and unless there is a statement on the record that would happen, I'd ask that you just ignore that.
Okay, and we're not requesting that as a town.
That is correct.
So it would be left, they could at a later date if they wanted to sell the property.
Correct.
Okay. Without it being unitized.
Right.
Does anybody have any questions on the board? I guess it's basically tearing the home down and making a backyard, right? Go ahead.
Yes. I walked the site with the landscape architect, are you the landscape architect?
I am for the land clearing portion, yes.
Okay. Somehow, Mr. Bodker,
Dave Bodker?
was he involved?
I think
I'd
that
have,
was,
Not that I'm aware of, but
not that Rick's, no, so not that we're aware of.
Okay. Anyway, so, I think he was at one point.
there was a previous plan to do something.
Oh,
with the
that's
property.
right, there was a previous plan. And so we walked the side, at that one time, so it wasn't related to this. But I wasn't in the backyard. I just wanna verify what you've done here. So you're gonna be trimming the tropical almond tree?
Yes.
Okay. Was there a tree on the north property line? I mean, I don't see it on here. I'm just working from memory here.
No, there's an existing ficus, and there's a tree on the north that's not on our property that
Oh,
overhangs.
Probably on the other side.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And then, I'm looking here where the 3 queen homes that are there.
In the corner, yes, in that
Yeah.
corner,
My memory, I mean, they're,
they need to be removed.
yeah, I mean, I think one of them doesn't even have the head on it and,
Yeah.
but are you removing those? or-
Yes, we will.
Okay, so, yes, so I just wanna make that point on this sheet.
Yeah, we'll modify that for the
Yeah, because it
permit.
doesn't show these to be removed, but they're in really poor shape, so.
Yeah, they are.
Does anyone have any feelings about the continuity of the hedge on the front? Whether it stays ficus all the way across, I don't think we've got the sort of rules that need to do that, I don't think we'll look any different. Yes, Rita?
I had a call from a neighbor, and he was asking what the hedge was going to be. And he didn't say that he was opposed to changing the variety from one to another, but there had been a similar circumstance on that street just recently as well, and that was an issue, having them line up the same. He didn't say that he was opposed. As a matter of fact, I thought he was gonna call you.
I didn't receive any telephone calls.
Okay, so there's no pushback from a neighbor at all?
Just a question.
Just a question. Okay, now is everybody ready to move on this? Would someone make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to approve a land clearing. Excuse me. I'd like to make a motion to approve a land clearing permit to trim, treat and shape existing hedge, remove dead stump and vines, and to trim existing trees.
And also, the three queen palms are coming out.
That's fine.
So, okay.
And removal of the 3 queen palms. Okay.
Yes.
There's a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded, Rita?
Mrs. Delafield,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Roach,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Chairman Smith.
Yes.
Furthermore, another motion to approve a demolition permit to remove a 2-story single-family dwelling, swimming pool, and all structures on the property. Second.
Moved and seconded, Rita?
Mrs. Delafield,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Roach,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Chairman Smith.
Yes.
And finally, a motion to approve a level 2 architectural site plan review to permit the land clearing and demolition permits, the installation of a 4-foot times 5-foot aluminum gate in the centre of the south property line, and to sod, landscape and irrigate the entire lot with the following conditions. 1. Any minor modifications in the approved landscaping shall be submitted to the town manager for review and approval, and any major modifications shall be brought back to the ARPB for review and approval prior to the commencement of landscaping. Second.
Moved and seconded, Rita?
Mrs. Delafield,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Roach,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Chairman Smith.
Yes. Thank you. Could you give us some idea of the timeline? Are they going to do this soon?
We're going to go immediately in for a demolition permit.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is item 1 on the agenda. It's an application by the Little Club for the construction of 2 pickleball courts. We have had some information presented to the board and the town from neighbors, adjoining neighbors. Rita, before we begin, who did we notify besides the Hillside House? Did we notify the casitas, people in the casitas?
Yes, should make that a part of the record.
I'm sorry, okay.
The applicant is responsible to supply me with the names of all of the abutting neighbors, and also addressed envelopes for them. So all of those were sent out, and then about a week after that, the one that went to Las Casitas was returned by the post office. So I called the applicant, and they said that they would obtain the names of all of the residents within the organization, and send out new notices, which they sent me a list, and I didn't receive any of those back, so I assume everyone got them.
Did we have to notify anybody in the St. Andrews Club that's really across the road, but probably not in the town of Gulfstream?
Yes.
They did notify them, or we don't notify them?
No, we've notified them if they're touching.
Right, okay. Okay, thank you.
But now, I better qualify that, the notice just goes to who's ever in charge, doesn't go to each individual.
Okay. All right, are you on?
I am.
Okay. Brian, identify yourself and then you can begin the presentation.
Sure, good morning. My name is Brian Donahue. I'm with Insight Studio. We're land planners and landscape architects, and we're here on behalf of the Little Club today to present a level 2 site plan application to you guys to add pickleball courts to their existing facilities. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started. I apologize with the setup. I think I'm going to have to jump back and forth here. So as I mentioned, our application request is for a level 2 site plan approval and land clearing permit to add pickleball courts to the existing property there. You can see highlighted on the screen in red is the location of the proposed pickleball courts. Just for reference, I think everybody's aware where the Little Club is located, just north of where we are right now. The gold star on the screen represents the location of the proposed court, so you can see it in relation to the surrounding properties. The future land use and the zoning designation is recreational. Per the land development regulations, code section 66-252, recreational activities are permitted by right uses in the recreational zoning district. Here just further designates the property boundary, so you can see that we do have the Hillside Hunt House just to the east, to the west is Las Casitas, and then north is St. Andrews. Obviously to the south is the golf course. So in red again you can see, just for a little more clarity on the relation to the adjacent properties where the courts are going to be located. Here's a rendering that we prepared so you can get a better understanding of exactly how the courts lay out. There will be 2 courts. To the south, we're maintaining an open sod area. North, obviously, the existing parking. You can see the cart storage building to the west, and to the east is the Hillside House. There's a small patio proposed just west of the courts for viewing, and then a couple benches on the south side of the courts. There will be an 8-foot fence on the east, north, and I'm sorry, just on the east, and then on the south and north there will be a 4-foot fence there, so that visibility is provided for people trying to view the matches. In addition to the fencing, there will be wind screening provided on the fencing, and there's also landscaping proposed. We're maintaining the required 25-foot setback as outlined in the code. There is going to be a 4-foot clusia hedge installed, so at the time of planting it'll be 4 feet. As we all know, clusia grows very quickly, so we anticipate that within a year or 2 that'll be an 8-foot hedge. It'll completely screen off the courts from the neighbors and from the parking lot to the north. Also, we're proposing some East Palaca holly trees. We don't want to put large canopy trees in there because they would drop debris on the courts and create a maintenance issue, so we're doing smaller canopy trees that can be maintained in a more appropriate manner. Here are some of the existing views just to give a little more context. So top left, looking north, see the parking lot and St. Andrews Club there. To the east, excuse me, you can see the Hillside House. There's quite a bit of existing vegetation. There's an existing hedge. There's an existing wall there, some Perotis palms that are screening out a portion of the building. A little bit of the building is exposed a little further to the west, but primarily directly east of where our courts are, there's already quite a bit of existing vegetation. To the south is the golf course view, and to the west is the existing cart barn. Just summarizing the courts, 2 pickleball courts. You know, we provided access connection from the existing pathway to the west and then to the new pathways to the south. We have circulation around the courts so that if you're playing a match, people can get to the courts on the far east side without cutting through the match that's happening on the west side. Seating areas that we've already talked about for viewing the courts. A couple things that I'd like to mention. For noise mitigation purposes, the club is proposing a cushioned court surface, which is actually like a rubberized surface that then gets coated with a finish to keep it intact, and that surface helps to mitigate with the noise from the balls. Additionally, there will be the paddles that the club is proposing are sound mitigating paddles, so they're made to reduce the noise that comes off the paddles when the ball hits the paddle. Those will be the only paddles that are allowed to be used, so members of the club will have to either have their own paddles that are approved, or they would be provided by the club. As I mentioned before, there will be a landscape buffer on the east and north side. There's a fence with a windscreen proposed. I would like to go on the record and state that in the application, we did state that there was going to be a screen that's actually a sound mitigating screen. At this time, that is not proposed. We think with the other mitigation things that we've proposed, just using the windscreen at this point is what we'd like to do. That provides obviously screening from the wind and a visual barrier from the adjacent property. And there is no lighting proposed, so keep in mind that, you know, during season it's dark by 5:30. So court play will be really from, you know, 8:30 to, you know, 5:30 when it gets dark in the afternoon during season. That's an overview of the presentation and what we were presenting to you guys today. Open it up for questions at this time.
Yeah, I've got a question. I received several telephone calls from people with regard to this, and I was wondering, was any consideration made to move one of the croquet courts, because two paddleball courts would fit into the same, actually be smaller than the usage of a croquet court, and to move one of the croquet courts, which is far less noisy, into a place where the paddleball courts are intended to go, and put the paddleball courts out in the middle of the golf course.
Well, they just actually built the additional croquet courts, and the idea of separating those two uses didn't make a lot of sense. It's meant that the croquet all works together, so there's the two that are there now, and there's an additional one that's been provided. So they want to keep those uses congruent to each other so they can function how they do today. So that was the reason why they're not actually separated.
I mean, I can understand that.
It's a
because
kind of a
logical
social
if you're gonna
gathering,
have
right.
croquet courts side by side.
Correct.
However, my question is that, you know, I have been told, and I have not verified this, but that up to 80% of the people living in the condominium to the east are opposed to this. And, you know, in the process of being a good neighbor, you know, I too am a member of the Little Club, but in the process of being a good neighbor, I think some accommodation should be accorded to being a good neighbor. And if it requires moving a croquet court, you know, so be it.
I think, you know, some measures have already been taken to try to be a good neighbor, obviously providing the required separation, the landscape buffering, mitigating the sound. You know, there's an existing wall that's there. There's a lot of things that are already been taken into consideration to make sure that this is not going to be a nuisance or an issue for anyone. So that's the club's approach at this point.
But do you play paddleball?
I don't know.
Well, it is a noisy sport. I play it and have played it, and it's a noisy sport, especially if it is adjacent to, you know, anyone who owns one of the condominium units on the west side of that building.
Right.
So, I mean, I had people saying, well, you know, property values, and, you know, and I'm not going to get into that because I don't know what the impact on property values would be. However, I do know that a lot of people in that building are very opposed to it.
And we're happy to try to accommodate them if there's other measures that, you know, or negotiations that need to take place, and try and, you know, speak with them. I understand, you know, from Rob that the president of the Little Club has been in contact with their president, and I know they've been communicating. As far as I understood, there was not major opposition to the proposal here. You know, if it's something that we need to discuss further with the neighbors, we're certainly open to those conversations.
Well, I think.
Go ahead, Georgette.
Why did you decide to do away with the sound mitigators?
Well, at this point, I think we feel that the paddles and the cushion surface has done enough to mitigate for the sound. So that's the reason. They found other measures that are, you know, the actual sound mitigating screening is fairly expensive. So by just simply doing the cushion surface and the paddles, we feel that that's going to be sufficient to
Do you
mitigate.
know how much quieter it is with the surface?
From like a technical or decibel level, I don't know.
Could you spend a little more time describing what the club went through and thinking why they would do it here versus, as Curtis suggested, putting it someplace else?
As far, I mean, that was my understanding that I explained.
They wanna keep.
They wanna keep the courts together, right, so it's overflow, they have the two croquet courts now, and so whenever there's overflow or need for additional, there's a third they wanna be able to use that's directly adjacent to the existing courts, so. With it being a social sport and the gathering area, they don't want people, you know, a couple hundred yards apart from each other. If you, I mean, I'd have to defer to Rob more on that.
Well, it's also would be the cost to move the court. You know, like, the court we're installing now is, the one additional one, I think is gonna cost us $50,000 or $60,000. So to move that court, because, and it would also probably require additional, like, layers of earth and things like that for drainage purposes, because the location where we're putting the pickleball courts, you know, does not even grow grass very well. You know, so it's not a very good place to put a croquet lawn, you know, and you know, like on Saturdays and say Sunday afternoons, you have 40 or 50 people coming to play croquet. And you know, every 20 minutes, you change partners and one group goes off the court and the next group comes on. And for them not to be next to one another, it would be really hard to do that.
Gary, any comments?
It's hard for me, just because I can understand if I were living next door, I wouldn't ideally want this, but it is zoned for that, and it seems, I mean, when you buy, I truly am not trying to offend anyone, but when you buy there and you know that it's a club, you know that there's a potential for that. And so I'm having a hard time, because I completely understand the one side, and I understand, but I think it's a tough one.
Rita, could we hear the feedback we've received?
Yes,
To give us
I'll read it for the record. My husband and I are owners and residents of Unit 11 of Hillside House in Gulfstream. I am writing to express our agreement that pickleball courts be constructed next to Hillside House. We are members of the Little Club and agree that the pickleball courts will be an enhancement to the members of the club with very little inconvenience to the owners of Hillside House. We are not able to attend the meeting, but wish for our thoughts to be considered in the decision-making process. And this was sent by Carol Stanley of Unit 11. And we have one here from John and Cynthia Gallagher. Thank you for providing us with this information. My wife Cynthia and I own 2 units within Hillside House, and our units are on the west side of the building, thus next door to the proposed site of the pickleball courts. As we will not be able to attend the meeting at 8:30, we wanted to send you this proxy for our views on this application. We are not in favor of the current site and feel the noise will be extreme and disruptive to the tranquil peace we certainly call home. We are also concerned that this will ultimately hurt the value of our home. We certainly didn't foresee pickleball courts next door to us and likely would have made an investment in Hillside House had we known about the courts. We would prefer that they consider placing them where the croquet courts are, where no one would be bothered by the noise in the middle of the golf course. The present location will have a detrimental effect on us as residents. 25 feet is not going to be enough to mitigate the noise that is associated with the game of pickleball. We want to be good neighbors, but feel that the Little Club should explore other sites within their footprint if that is possible. And it's signed by John and Cynthia Gallagher. And then we have as this one was written, one of them was written to Mr. Dunham, the town manager. It says, as manager of Gulfstream, I want to let you know of our profound concern at the Hillside House about the plan the Little Club has to build 2 pickleball courts on Little Club Road, so close to our condominium. It is, after all, only a few feet away from our terraces and bedroom windows. It is not only a grave concern for our peace and quiet, but also for the value of our condominium. We all know or have heard how noisy pickleball courts are. Gulfstream is a quiet community with a lot of retirees, and I hope that is everyone's concern to keep it this way. Winter is also a time when keeping our windows open is something we look forward to, and the noise from pickleball courts would make that impossible. I understand that a certain amount of noise is always to be expected from our neighbors, but pickleball courts is more than just a little noise at any time. This game has become increasingly popular among people everywhere in Florida. I understand the little club's interest for an additional element, but unfortunately, unlike tennis or golf, the noise has increased activity that this would bring does not make it a good neighbor with its proposed location. It is called ping pong on steroids for a reason, and that repetitive noise made when wooden paddle strikes the plastic balls is always very loud, as well as the enthusiasm of the players. The proposed area where it is supposed to be built produces already quite an echo. The hillside and the little club have always had good neighborly relations, and we want to keep it this way and hope we can find some friendly resolution to everybody's satisfaction. And this is signed Sophia Bent. And then we have, this was just handed to me at the meeting, so I have not read it. I gave all of you a copy. Do you want me to read this in its entirety?
There's also
Wendy
one.
Barrow?
No, there's another one.
From Wendy Barrow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one says, my name is Sophia Bent, and I'm here to represent most of the residents of Hillside House, 200 Little Club Road, who are quite concerned with the Little Club's intention, announced some 3 weeks ago, to build 2 pickleball courts 25 feet away from the westerly wall of our condominium building. The reasons for our concern are twofold, namely the loud and piercing noise made by the plastic wiffle-like ball and the wooden mallet that this game requires, and the negative effect that having the 2 proposed courts in very close proximity, 25 feet, to our building would have on the values of our condominium units. For those folks who have played or seen the game, they will know how loud it is, and for the others, we have provided copies of an article explaining how the growth in popularity on the game has led to issues of conflict between the proponents of the game and neighbors of the proponents, often clubs or other recreational entities. The article is called, "Why Are Your Pickleball Courts Receiving Complaints from Neighbors?" The article says that courts located within 350 feet from residential structures often require abatement, meaning freestanding walls 8 feet above the playing surface. The next comment is that courts located within 150 feet require careful abatement design to avoid complaints. It should not be surprising that the proposed distance between our building and the new court is much less than what is recommended. Also, we do not see that abatements, freestanding walls, are a part of the plans. Thus, it is our belief that the plans should not be approved by this board. We would not object to the Little Club moving the location of the new pickleball courts being proposed to the relatively recent site of the new croquet courts and reciting the croquet courts where the just proposed pickleball courts are planned. It is fair to say that all of us like being neighbors of the Little Club. Some of us are neighbors, are members there, and all the rest of us are always delighted when some gullible soul invites us to join them in that great dining room with that great food. Thank you. Sophia Bent. This is from Wendy Barrow. I resident of the Hillside House and member of the Little Club. I understand you have an architecture review board of Gulfstream is meeting on July 25th. Therefore, I'm letting you know that I am very much opposed to the Little Club's plans to install pickleball courts next to Hillside House. It is well-known fact that pickleball, with its hard paddles and balls, is an extremely noisy sport. The Little Club's plans to build it next to Hillside House will make life untenable for those who live on the west side of the building. As a member and good neighbor of the Little Club, I'm asking they consider putting the pickleball courts elsewhere on their property far enough away to abate any noise. Thank you in advance for your consideration. And it's signed Wendy Barrow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. So we have sort of a majority of the residents of the Hillside House writing some sort of an objection to it. There's two issues. One is that Byron mentioned noise abatement. I don't know if it's possible to do. 25 feet is probably less than from here to that wall there, so you can't say, well, it's 25 feet away. It's like nothing. The Bath and tennis courts are 300 feet away from my house, and I can hear them playing when I'm outside. So you're definitely going to hear pickleball no matter where you are in the building. So one thought we as a board could consider would be to ask them to go back to the drawing board on noise abatement. We could go ask them to go back and offer an alternative site plan, or something else. Does anybody have, we've got 3 members of the board and members of the Little Club. They're in an awkward situation.
Okay.
Incidentally, none of you are on the governing board of the Little Club, are you, Curtis or
No.
Georgette? Or
No.
But I'm on 2 committees.
You're on 2 committees, okay.
Tom, I'm not a member, and so you said discussions had taken place between the presidents.
That's correct.
Could I hear about how those discussions went?
The way, like, I was told, and I think that was Mr. Gallagher, you read his letter. From what our president told me of the conversation was he thought they had had a nice conversation and that he didn't really think that Mr. Gallagher was opposed. He thought he was neutral. So, the best of our understanding, that was the result of their conversation. But obviously, he wrote a letter
Yeah, thank you.
that says something different.
He was also one of the people who made a telephone call to me with regard to it.
And I had 2 telephone calls from him as well.
Yeah, I think the other thing is you said that the sound screening, you think it wasn't needed now. It's not very factual in terms of, we believe that this decibel level is now reduced.
We don't have that information.
Yeah, it's circumspect and thinking about it isn't sufficient.
And you're
for
also
some things. Sorry, go ahead, Karen.
You're also saying there's going to be a third croquet court?
But yeah, they've already sodded an area, for croquet.
I don't know.
Technically, it's 2 lawns are croquet. I'm sorry, I'm Rob Leonard, I'm the general manager.
Okay, okay.
We have, technically, the 3rd lawn is a 2nd lawn. One of the issues with having that space reversed, aside from growing grass and irrigation and those issues, it's not large enough. The site where we're proposing pickleball is not large enough to hold our croquet. And to the other side of that, croquet, we have 30 or 40 people at a time on that lawn. It's not, it might be a little quieter than pickleball, I understand the opposition, but it would be very difficult for us to make that swap.
But Rob,
Yeah.
a croquet court is 100 feet long and 50 feet wide. And the schematic that the pickleball court has is exactly 50 feet wide, plus, the buffers on the sides.
Where it's a 60 by 60 proposal right now.
Yeah, and now the length is going to extend a croquet field somewhat longer into the club property, but it is doable. Now, granted, as you say, the sunshine for the grass, et cetera, may present a problem, and obviously it's going to be an additional expense for the club. But, to accommodate these people?
The issue with the croquet and swapping, aside from irrigation and grass and things of that nature, the length of it, what we're doing now enables us to stage carts for our tournaments.
Is to what?
Is to stage carts for our tournaments.
With
Yeah.
that open grass area there to the south, is what
Yes.
you're referring to?
And without that space, we would have nowhere to stage our carts for our tournaments, and really the only amenity other than croquet is, the main amenity is, it's a golf club. So for us to not be able to do that it would be very difficult for us. We wouldn't have a place to put them, literally. We have 32 golf carts and we would have no place to put them. So that was part of that thought. We do want to be a good neighbor. We are trying to take as many steps as we can to soundproof and to take care of. If you Google pickleball, I understand there's major issues. Punta Gorda shows up immediately. They play into the night, there's chain link fences, there's cement courts, there's zero abatement. So we're doing the best that we can to be a good neighbor. We don't want to upset anybody.
But has
That's not right.
Hillside had any trouble with the tennis courts on the other side of them? You know, like have there been any complaints, because they have tennis courts there without
Were you
any.
sworn
I'm
in?
Sophie Bent, and I'm, member of, I'm representing the Hillside. Actually, I'm representing 11 out of the 12 units who are opposed to pickleball. To answer your question, I don't know about the tennis courts. However, those tennis courts are very seldom used in St. Andrews, probably just a few hours in the morning, never in the afternoon, an hour in the evening. So, you know, and tennis is not exactly the same game. It just, you know, it's not a pump, 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 pump. It's kind of a little, it's a little quieter. My concerns, I'm directly to the west of this pickleball court, so I'm really 25 feet of them. And the sight of them doesn't offend me. It's not the sight that I'm worried about. It really is the noise, especially that area right there between the two buildings. The golf course and St. Andrews already produce an echo. So I feel like really, you know, some kind of consultant as far as the noise really needs to be there and kind of give you advice on how to abate the noise. I feel you've got a really big golf course. I feel like maybe those courts would definitely be, you know, better somewhere else. Maybe not where the croquet is, but I'm sure there has to be a place where they could be put.
Yeah, it's like
Because
really difficult.
St. Andrews are gonna have the same problem, you know, noise comes up. You're gonna have problems not just with us, you're gonna have problems with St. Andrews. And we all invested in the success of the little club, whether we're members or not. You know, we don't want anything else to be there but a golf course. But we bought next to a golf course, we didn't buy next to pickleball courts. It's kind of a little different. There's very few, you know, Caroline, to say that, you know. Of course, we kind of bought next to, you know, an area that could be developed, but it was a golf course. There was no reason for us to think that pickleball courts would be there. Pickleball is really a new game, kind of new. God knows how long it's going to last, but right now it's very popular. So we understand your need, you know, to kind of try to get it. But I know it's going to create problems.
Part of our need is to create an amenity for our membership.
And I
as
understand
much
that.
as our golf course might seem large and vast, we have 34 acres that are very cramped, quite honestly. If anybody's been out to the club, there's really not an alternative spot, with the exception of croquet, that we can put it. I know it seems like a big space, but we do have 18 holes, and that is our primary function as a golf course. We can't offer our membership another amenity. The only other option to really, we don't have a fitness center, we don't have Pilates and yoga and things of that nature, and those are on the horizon. We'd love to be able to offer that amenity.
Well, I know St.
We're not
Andrews
spaced
have
there.
kind of had, you know, talks about joining the two clubs to kind of offer all the amenities.
Yeah, that will never happen.
But-
They have
But
their
that's-
residences that are built.
But that's
into-
kind of, you know,
We're getting a
that's,
little off subject
yeah, that's
here.
just not part of the.
Greg, would you like to say something?
Yeah, just a couple comments that may or may not help here. When speaking with the staff about the pickleball courts, it was, or at least I felt like that it was implied that this sound attenuation padding would be included, you know, in the application.
And it actually was included, that was the original intent, and, you know, we did not mean to, you know, we weren't trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. And the club, Rob and I spoke about it, they are willing to go back down that road if that's something that the board feels is necessary.
And the other thing that was also mentioned that, and the staff was trying to, you know, maybe suggested that they try to move those courts further south, which would, you know, not be that much farther away from the hillside, but it would, you know, provide a little more distance. And the response was that, well, they want to keep that clear because there could be future expansion. So that hasn't been brought up today, so I thought, you know, it should be part of the discussion. You know, maybe they can expand on those comments.
We don't know what pickleball is gonna mean to us. We don't know if anybody, if it is gonna catch on, if people do want to play, or if we're gonna have 2 matches a day or 15 matches a day.
I just needed to bring that up because it was discussed that there could be possible future expansion. And that would have to go, you know, on the south side. So, also, depending on what the board does here, the code does require that the courts would have to be fully enclosed. So the fencing would also need to go on the west side.
Okay. Is there a height specification?
I don't believe so. I'm sure it would be a minimum of 4 feet.
It's a 4 foot.
And I would like, and just to Ms. Delafield's point, I'd like to point out, just, you know, from a straight code standpoint, I mean, you know, we understand we want to be good neighbors. Property rights are important to a lot of people. The code is written for a reason, and it does allow for recreational uses, which are permitted by right in the zoning district. So I just want to make that clear that this is a permitted use in the zoning district, and we're meeting all of the development regulations for this property. So.
I'm not contesting.
I'm just making it clear, you know, there's a point that was brought up, and I wanted to make sure.
I'm only contesting, you know, I've lived next up, unhappy neighbors,
Right.
and it's not a pleasant experience over the course of
Right, I don't want to make unhappy neighbors.
Yeah, the issue you're facing is when you put up the point of recreation, it had tennis, swimming, etc. It didn't have pickleball in there because obviously
It wasn't.
Yeah,
Right,
exactly. That's the
correct.
challenge we were facing.
Correct.
The other thing is you mentioned about 4 foot vegetation in a couple, 1 to 2 years
Correct.
to grow. One of the things we do is make sure that the vegetation goes in as is. You know, we have applications that will say this tree will grow to cover this house.
Right.
That's not where we go. I mean, obviously that's a separate issue to does it go in at all.
Right.
But any vegetation and landscaping is as it will be.
Right.
Yeah, the
And we're
neighbours-
even happy to, you know, if it needed to be a little bit taller at the time of installation, I think that's something that's.
We provided an article about noise and a study on how to. I would really like you to read it because it really states distance and how high walls needs to be and,
And sinking as well as an option.
yes.
When were you planning on doing this?
Upon approval.
I mean, you would start, you would
Well, once
start.
permitting is finalized.
Georgette, any other comments, or Curtis?
Well, no, I mean, my only comment is that it seems contentious enough that it perhaps should be tabled temporarily and rethought as, you know, from the club's point of view and from the condominium's point of view to see if something can be worked out. And as I said, you know, maybe you do have to move a croquet court and use golf carts to go back and forth to exchange, which is, I realize, a pain, but, you know, it's trying to keep everybody happy is what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I think that it's also the dead of summer, and I hate something like this to come up when a lot of the people who probably live in the hillside house aren't even here. Same with St. Andrews, same with the casitas, and maybe if we had it a month or so from now, or 2 months from now, we'd have a chance to have more participation at a meeting if they wanted to. In addition to noise abatement, I think we're kind of saying we want to hear something more about noise abatement. Is also, you could consider limiting the time that the courts are playable. You know, you could say not before 10 in the morning and not after 5 in the afternoon, or because in the middle of the day, we're all busy and the noise isn't as obtrusive then, but if you're sitting on your back patio at 4:30, you know, you may not want to hear it. And I can tell you, some of the
Weekends.
people, it's probably you who live in the hillside house, it's not like you're ground level with them, you know they're, they're elevated. I don't even think 8 feet is gonna be enough, I don't know if 20 feet would be high enough, but, so they're gonna be looking down on it, and, so I would, we may need to do this with a motion, but I'd like to table it, but we need to give them some direction.
Yeah. One of the things I'd like to see is the fact that we think this is going to work, but quantifiable, proper study, survey that, you know, third-party experts come in and say, guess what, if we do this, it'll be this, it'll be this. And then it's not a case of, do we like it or not, or we think it, it's, those are the facts. Because we need more information to base our decision on.
Right.
That's how I feel.
That's exactly what the code contemplates for deferring to a future date, that you give what information that you need for the applicant to come back. So in addition to meeting with the neighbors and trying to work out some solution, I think Malcolm has identified the facts upon which the ARPB wishes were more clear or in the record for them to make a decision.
And I'll just make one more comment, and I think you're potentially going in the right direction here, as the attorney said, giving them some direction, but we as the staff have to, respond to nuisance complaints. And so, we do have nuisance ordinances that also include noise. And so, we would like to work to see if, as the chairman suggested, some kind of maybe scientific, more of a scientific study that would address this. Because we really are not supposed to, initially construct something that in any way constitutes a nuisance with respect to noise.
Okay, do you have enough direction from us?
I think so. I guess I'd like to summarize to make sure we're all clear that, so we're gonna first and foremost meet with the neighbors and see if we can figure out some accommodations to, maybe gain a little more support from their side. Second, obviously study the sound abatement. You guys are asking for us to actually hire a third party that could do some sort of, decibel testing, I assume is what you're asking for, to understand, if you played it with your traditional wooden paddles and plastic balls on a asphalt surface versus, I guess we'd start to look at other uses that are around. I mean, like we mentioned, the tennis. I mean, tennis is not a quiet sport. I know nobody's looked at how often those courts are used. She lives there. She said they're not used that often, but we could look at that and understand the difference. I mean, it's, that's a use that's right there directly adjacent to the other side of the condo, and it's even closer. So let's look at what the noise levels of tennis versus pickleball are.
And also, could we have some examples, not just this is what this reference textbook says, but other examples that this is what happened in Arizona or wherever, but the noise level went down, not just reference to textbooks.
Okay. And I don't know that there would be textbooks written about pickleball. True. But yeah, we can certainly try to go down that road.
One of my favorite books.
And then the nuisance ordinance, obviously, we'll study that a little closer and speak with staff about that to make sure, obviously, we're not constructing something that becomes a nuisance and there are noise complaints. And I think that was everything. Anything else you got?
Did you have the landscaping option in there?
Yeah, the landscape plan, well, I brought it with me. I don't have it.
No, as into the 4 feet wouldn't cut it.
Oh, yeah, okay. So additional landscaping for screening purposes. And I
May be
believe,
able to do it with some large trees in the 25-foot setback area too, because some of those people are not gonna be looking down on it, so.
right,
I don't mean the ones you've got shown where you've got the 8-foot hedge, I mean bigger trees east of that even could possibly mitigate it. We don't know. We're all friends of the Little Club, we all have friends that are members there, 3 of them are on the board here, so we're not trying to be mean. We just wanna make something that makes the Little Club get along with their neighbors on a permanent basis.
Yeah.
right.
Okay. And I know the Little Club wants to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
And there's no meeting in September?
no, their next meeting will be September
September.
26th.
September, no, August meeting, I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's no
26th. If you get any information between now and then, certainly you can get it to the town and they'll circulate it so we can have, it'd be better if we got it other than like the 25th of September.
Oh, absolutely, we've got, yeah, we'll be on.
Do we need a motion
You have a-
to defer?
Do you have a question?
Maybe just a comment. My name is David Gunther, I'm a realtor, work in the area, and I wasn't sworn in, by the way, so let me just disclose that, but
Well,
I think plans-
please, you need to be sworn in.
Just
Yeah.
Stand, Rita, could you swear me, please?
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Just a thought, because, you know, the best noise abatement that I know of, you know, looking at buildings on a regular basis is windstorm protection is dual plane impact glass. I don't know if that's, you know, in that building or not, but if it's not, and, you know, if I was a neighbor and you were gonna do something like that, it might be a thought. I don't know what the cost involved, I don't know if that may be an option, but you're talking about a wall that's gonna be X amount of high and windows that are gonna be above that are still gonna be affected. So it's just a thought. Has anybody looked at impact windows or, you know, some kind of compensation for impact windows on that building? It may be too costly, it may not make sense. It's just a thought, knowing that I go into buildings all the time and in one unit, there's no impact glass, you hear roadways, you hear all kinds of stuff. You go to the next unit, it's beautiful, it's nice and quiet. Doesn't affect not being able to open the windows on a beautiful day. When you want to open the windows, that's still a concern, but we're talking about noise reduction, we're talking about, you know, screening on fencing. When I hear, you know, walls and heights and stuff like that, I'm just thinking impact glass is just something that maybe as a partial solution, compensation, something, you know, it's just a thought, just worth mentioning.
Thank you.
Okay, we need a motion to defer.
I will make a motion to defer this application to a point forward when the points we've addressed or we've raised have been addressed and ready to be presented back to the board.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion, comments?
I think we need to
Okay.
Yeah, I think we
have
need
a
to,
time
as
certain.
you said.
Oh, I thought that was on tonight, thank
It
you.
would be September 26th.
Okay.
Okay.
By September 26th, is that okay with you?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, really.
Did we get a second?
Yes. Second.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Roach,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith,
Should I still?
Chairman Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. See you guys in a couple months and we'll be in operating conversations probably sooner than that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see, I think.
I'm in Dallas, I'm the treasurer. Do you have any?
No, I don't have any padlocks.
And are there any items by staff? Anybody on the board have any other comments or questions? No? Public statement, no, right? Okay, so
Because you
we
said
will
that there's
adjourn.
maybe,
Thank you.
thinking of
If you
increasing.
get some, feed it to us.
We don't even know
what it is.
But it's like, what are you talking about? You know, you were talking about the tennis court, the thing is, when the tennis court goes, by the time when you get a sidewalk. You have a vote, the tennis courts were okay.
They must have a president.
Because they vote for it. Whereas,
I got it, David Gunther. Good. I just have to do it for the record. You're with
the worst usage
Lag. Got it. Thank you. Renee.
just to tell you, these are my units.
Well, I know.
You know, I'm actually the closest one.
Anyway,
You've got one now, that's right here, but you've got a really big acre here. I played it out with my kids when they were young, and so the acre here is lost. Because that was what, and it just renovates with St. Andrews. So this is really not a good sign as far as pickleball.
I won't, I'll
Driving range, is involved in this. She's not sure if her community feels like pickleball and how involved it is with this.
No other place.
Recreational activities. If it is, then she.
Then maybe this is where you need to make a little bit more of an accommodation here, but that would just be whoever is going to. Well, that's just your problem, but, you know, how much problem do you want to have with your neighbor? Because there's no problem. Well, you know that as it is right now, they will bring them and they don't need new cabinets, that just, you know, those 8 feet wall. Those buildings are really tall, they're forced to be tall, that always going to carry no matter what. I don't know, just get back to the drawing board and kind of look it over and study how to.
She just said it.
Well, it has to be reasonable, that's the thing. I mean, it seems like we don't have some things that our neighbors and that's not, you know, that's not gonna happen. So it's like, you know, I mean, I work during the day, that doesn't affect me during the day. All my neighbors are affected because they all rent here. I'm gonna be affected during the weekend. You know, so all these people that are talking, none of them are here right now. I don't know about it. I'm pretty sure that, you know, Richard's will tell me about it. It's a big concern. It's like buildings
You would have to make a recommendation.
I also would say in Florida, the amount of lawsuits for, you know, that kind of thing is absolutely astounding. The amount of lawsuits for, you know, that kind of pickleball courts in the cities and all this. There's a lot of them. I don't want to give up. But, you know, my unit is going to be selling so close to pickleball court. It's
We'll see. So as long as we have something to hire you did.
No, it just got to be.
Oh, no, you couldn't sell it, they say.
No, but I'm sure there's, you know, there has to be a solution, which is kind of, I mean, what's anything closer to it's just like, I mean, look how close this is, it's just not. Yeah, that's just been my storm, you know. I mean, I also bad that, you know, having holes in the hat, it just really stops the noise. How are you? How are you doing? You're giving us a lot of donuts. It's one of those, you know, studies that just gives us facts. I mean, we're talking about articles that we yeah, well, they're not, they're landscaping, you know, architects, they're not.
Who knows, you might see me soon.
We may see you, Mike. They probably are going.
I mean, I read this sort of thing, I just like to ask, you know, I'd like to see, just, you know.
We understand.
You know, I love the game, it's just, you know, it's fun, great, but not when you're here, it's on the courts. You know, it's fun when you're on the court, not when you're just here.
Yeah, and
Already just a little dog show, and,
you know,
just make some
Tom Cutler had given me a call, Tom and Debbie Cutler, and, you know, Debbie insisted on getting on the.
And this isn't every day. Oh, this is just absolutely horrible. It's just like even when you're windows closed, it's,
You know,
I tell you, there's a
you know, maybe
really
it's
good
merely a
NACO
question
in this
of
area.
informing them
I mean, study, because this is
Because
a
I
really
think a lot
bad
of people
area as
felt
far as
that
the
this sort of
noise.
came up all of a
We
sudden.
used to come here, we used to
You know,
come
and,
here with my
you know,
kids,
it's the
and
old,
we used to
if you
yell because.
tell
it was
all
like-
your neighbors what you're doing, and why you're doing it, and how
Because
it's
you got
gonna
that reverberation,
They're probably seeing it as
the
we're trying to sneak it
parking
in
lot,
somewhere
Yeah,
else here.
yeah.
The matter is, you know, construction is-
Yeah, yeah.
no, it goes into it bounces off here, and
Anyway,
with the
thank you.
parking
Okay.
lot, there's something that just does it,
It must be bouncing off the buildings.
so I don't know.
All right, so we'll be
Yeah,
working,
yeah,
it's a highway
yeah,
issue.
yeah.
Yeah, we met in the meeting last, when we started the process, yeah.
Right, I can't remember what I did yesterday, so.
But no, I'm
It's
sorry,
okay, yeah,
right now there's
we're
11
working
units out
together
of
to
12
try to
that
figure
are
out how we
against
can-
it, even the one on the other
Yeah,
side
well,
are against it,
and
because they're worried about the value of their condo.
Pretty sick.
And the majority of our condo is really
Yep.
on this side, those are where the most units are, and that's unfortunate for you.
Do we have access to copies of letters?
Yeah, they're posted,
Yeah,
posted on the
yeah,
website.
those are all.
So is there a decibel thing in the code that shows what is too noisy? Do you know, Rita, is there anything like in the code, like, because even if we test decibels.
No, I don't